Welcome back to another episode of SageNtheRage.
I'm Sage.
And I'm Rage. And today, we're going to do a follow-up piece on our Thrall and Jaina, and we're going to be talking about Genn, Greymane, and Sylvanas, and maybe their roles, or what could possibly happen to them in Battle for Azeroth, as well as looking at their backstories to kind of build up their characters to where they are now.
Yeah, so probably the first one we're going to be talking about is Genn Greymane. And you really can't talk about Genn Greymane without getting into Sylvanas. Those two have kind of become interwoven together as characters. And, they're essential to each other at this point.
And really the character that kind of, and in an inadvertently way, the character that brings these two together to their rivalry is Deathwing, starting back in Cataclysm when the Sundering happens and Deathwing breaks loose and the world is shattered. The wall around Gilneas, the wall that the Gilneans have built to keep everyone else out, including the Alliance and the Forsaken, is now fractured. And Sylvanas sees an opportunity and she goes for it. And this starts the battle between Gilneas and Undercity. And as Sylvanas is, coming around the town, surrounding it and taking siege of it, there's another thing going on that Sylvanas couldn't expect or foresee.
Yeah, so the Gilneans kind of have a little trick up their sleeve. They are Worgans.
And not a trick that they planned. You see, when we go back into Worgen culture, it originally started with the Druids going into pack form and embracing the fury of the wolf, ancient Goldrun, during the War of the Satyr, and having some problems there, and then it became the Worgen Curse. And then centuries later, the Worgen Curse and the Worgans were unleashed once more by Archmage Aragorn inside of Shadowfang Keep to fight off the Scourge, not the Forsaken, but the Scourge during that war. And eventually that curse finds its way to Gilneas through Silverpine Forest and the other areas. And so, right before the siege starts to take place on Gilneas, the Worgen Curse and some Worgen have broken in, and now the Worgen Plague, so to say, I'll call it a plague, an outbreak would be a better word for it, is sweeping over Gilneas. And so Sylvanas unknowingly attacks a town full of what she thinks is just helpless humans that are cut off from everyone. She thinks it's an easy tactical strike because no one's going to come to help them. The Gilneans are cut off from the Alliance, but they have a power of their own that they accidentally stumbled across through this Worgen Curse. Sylvanas comes in, the battle ensues, the Worgen thing is getting controlled and dealt with, and then Genn Greymane and his son, and this sets the ball in motion for their burning hatred for each other. Sylvanas wants the city, she's losing, and she goes to execute Genn Greymane, and instead Liam Greymane, Genn's son, comes running out in the middle of the battlefield, and Sylvanas kills Liam instead.
Yeah, so this really forges the burning hatred Genn Greymane has for Sylvanas. His own son struck down by Sylvanas. And now, moving into Battle for Azeroth, at Legion we had Sylvanas rise up to War Chief. So now Genn's greatest enemy, the person he probably hates more than anyone else, is now the face of the Horde.
So this puts a natural hatred for Genn versus the Horde in all aspects. And it also puts Genn in a position where he's reckless, and we already saw this in Legion. Everyone else is focusing on getting the Pillars of Creation on the Broken Isle, the Broken Shore, all those battles. And Genn is up in Stormheim fighting Sylvanas one-on-one, and we see that battle come to head at the end of the storyline in Stormheim. And, I think it's well stated the hatred that Genn has for her when he takes the arrow to the chest, but he gets the lantern that was controlling Air and the rest of the Valkyr, and he destroys it. And he looks at her and he says, "You took my son, I'm taking your future." Because she needs the Valkyr to keep raising more Forsaken. They're going to run out of time. If they die, they won't be able to get back up, and they're going to run out of people as Forsaken. And so he's willing to damage, and I want to say the Forsaken are people because they're conscious and they have thought and they have free will. He's willing to damage and permanently put an entire culture of people at risk just for his vengeance.
Yeah, Genn is blinded by anger. We even see this at the start of Legion. Varian Wrynn dies on the Broken Shore, and the first thing Genn Greymane wants to do is go at the Horde's throat.
Yep, like we just got our butts kicked. We lost our king, and Genn, still blinded by hatred, is, yep, let's go attack.
Yeah, because he believes, and, they obviously don't know the Horde side of it, but he believes the Horde abandoned them to die on the Broken Shore.
And when you're blinded like that, it doesn't matter if somebody reveals the truth to you. Even if Genn were to learn why the Horde pulled back, he would comment on their character, say they could have kept fighting, say they could have done more, and nothing will ever be good enough for Genn. And so as we go into Battle for Azeroth with Genn Greymane and his hatred towards Sylvanas as a character, he's blinded by it. He's a wild card that's willing to damage a whole race of people just to get even. And now that, like Sage said, Sylvanas is in charge of the entire Horde, Genn is willing to attack any group of people in the Horde as well. He is blinded by rage, and that's not just Worgen rage that's out of control. It's his character as a whole. It makes him a wild card that is not a good fit for a tactician or someone to have in a battle.
And you have to look at one key thing with Genn Greymane. He's not just another foot soldier. He is essentially the right-hand man of Anduin, right as we're talking in Battle for Azeroth.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be giving Anduin, advice, telling him where to send troops and everything. Is Genn Greymane really the man you want at the side of the leader of the Alliance?
And how much of the decision, as we've seen in the Battle for Azeroth cinematic trailer, to attack Undercity is actually Anduin, and how much of it is Genn pushing for his vengeance again? Now, we don't know all the things that fueled and led up to that. We did a whole video on who burnt down Teldrassil and what started the war. But that still doesn't solve anything, and we can guess all we want. How much of it is still just his unwielding hatred for Sylvanas that they're attacking Undercity and sieging it, as we see in that cinematic trailer? And look at the risk that they put the troops at there. Genn, in my opinion, is just a dangerous character who needs to have his storyline, as I think in Battle for Azeroth, come to an end. Now, we'll get back to that more on later when we talk about Sylvanas and Genn together in Battle for Azeroth, but let's switch gears to the other side of the coin, Sylvanas Windrunner.
Yeah, so just a quick recap of her backstory. High Elf Ranger, fell in the siege of, the High Elves.
Silvermoon.
Of Silvermoon, to the Scourge, and, she was raised by Arthas, and pretty much that was where we get the current Sylvanas. Very damaged, broken.
And let's take a moment to really, not to go into current political situations, but is she mentally fit to be a leader? Because, yes, that would be taxing to be raised as an undead scourge, and she tries to kill herself. Then as she goes forward and her great enemy Arthas, once that enemy is gone, much like Genn, she has nothing to hold her rage and her focus at. She spent all this time going after Arthas. Well, when we, the heroes of Azeroth, kill Arthas on top of Icecrown, she is once again lost. She doesn't know what to do with herself. She doesn't know how to lead. She doesn't quite know where to go with it. And so she throws herself off Icecrown and tries to kill herself again. Then she sees a vision from the Valkyrie and decides, okay, I'm going to keep going forward with everything. But that's a second suicide attempt in her story. And so now Bol'jin has been killed, and the Loa, quote unquote, that's still in speculation, say, elect her as war chief. And coming off a Legion, we have somebody who hates her guts, Genn Greymane, and she, who hates him just as much for all the Forsaken that she lost during the battle and trying to siege Gilneas. And she wants to find a way to procure Forsaken longevity with the Valkyrie that we talked about earlier with Genn's storyline. Is she the right person to lead the Horde? She is mentally unstable, and without a point of anger or focus, can she pull it together to care for her people? Now, in Legion, we saw some character development where she started to slowly, and I mean slowly, push past herself with lines like, do you want to avenge Bol'jin? Follow me. All these other things. But yet in the background the whole time, she's in Stormheim worrying about the Forsaken over the rest of the Horde. In the intro to Christy Golden's new book, we see that she doesn't even want to be there at that parade of victory for the Legion. She wants to be back in Undercity in her shadows, hiding, not being up front and center. So we have somebody who almost seems introverted in an extroverted leadership role, who also has tried to kill themselves several times when they don't see a point for their lives. Is she the person to be leading the Horde into the Battle for Azeroth?
Well, and even going back to Christy Golden's new book, we find out that Sylvanas isn't ready to just sit and relax after the Burning Legion. She wants to claim Stormwind.
Mm-hmm.
And with Azerite and all this new stuff, she might just be going for the throat against the Alliance finally.
And the problem with that is, how do you go into Stormwind and lead an assault without, again, sacrificing a ton of people? And she's willing to sacrifice people to get what she wants. Her own Forsaken, even though she wants to save them, she will sacrifice them in battles. You know, the rest of the Horde, who doesn't mean as much to her as the Forsaken, they're just pawns on a board. And to siege Stormwind would require you to come in the front, which would just be deadly, because there's a bottleneck at the bridge. Or you have to come in by the port. And launching yourself off of a boat into a port, and then into another bottleneck through the Mage District to get towards the main castle would just be very hard. It'd be a very strong battle. And is Sylvanas willing to do that, should that come to that?
Well, and let's look at the other side of things. Let's go from Undercity, which we know Undercity gets sieged in Battle for Azeroth. But if Sylvanas were to go from Undercity, guess what's right between Stormwind and Undercity?
Ironforge.
And Sylvanas, I don't think, has the capability to take Ironforge.
Again, that's another bottleneck situation. Would she be willing to sacrifice that many Horde to either first take Stormwind, to take the tram back there, which they could get bottlenecked again coming out the tram, or they're bottlenecked trying to go in the front door, and that's a bunker. And it's on the high ground. So you have to march up a hill, lose a ton of bodies just going up the hill. Well, you know, the dwarves shoot you out because, you know, they love their gunpowder and guns.
Oh yeah, the dwarves got the range advantage.
And they have the height. So what is she willing to do to lead that? Why is the tree burnt down? Now, I do want to get to another video. I did a cinematic analysis trailer. And I did say in the cinematic analysis trailer that you see a look of compassion on Sylvanas' face before she goes full Banshee. And she looks down and sees Sarfang getting shot up. She sees, you know, all the other Horde dying all the way around her. And there is this brief moment, which looks like compassion for her people as the Horde as a whole. I hope that I'm wrong about her mental, instability, about her, vengeance, and just her narrow-sightedness on the Forsaken matter. Nothing else does. But she's not a trusting woman. Can she overcome those things? And if we go back to why is she not trusting and what would it take to overcome, let's look no further again to, Wrath of the Lich King. When Putricide betrayed the Forsaken and bombed everybody with that plague, the Horde took the blame. The Horde blamed the Forsaken for that. And so they lost trust there, and she was betrayed by her own people. And now, again, going into Battle for Azeroth, we learn of a group called the Desolate Council inside of Undercity that question her leadership again. She is surrounded by people who betray her and don't follow her. How is she going to grow as a character and not be so reckless?
Yeah, I think really Battle for Azeroth is going to be building the future of Sylvanas. Will she remain as the shadowy character that she is, or will she rise up and truly be a good war chief for the Horde?
And so this leads us to our overall predictions for Battle for Azeroth. If I had to put a single guess, I would say that there's a good chance that both Sylvanas and Genn could be passing away in this expansion. I would put more weight on Genn Greymane being the character to lose inside of Battle for Azeroth. I think Genn is at a much higher risk of being blinded by rage and hatred than Sylvanas has for her distrust and her instability. I think Genn is a loose cannon that is going to get the Alliance hurt, and probably himself. The reason I say more on Genn is because, as Sage and I were discussing earlier before we were recording this track, is that the Horde has lost a ton of leaders. And to take another one away again, and yet the expansion following, would really be harmful to Horde lore and I think the Horde characters as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, just taking a step back, Thrall stepped down as war chief. Garrosh, well, we all know about Garrosh.
That ended well.
Vol'jin just died last expansion. We kind of don't really need another war chief fighting the big one at this point.
So overall, I think they both could pass on in this expansion, but I'm hoping, and this sounds horrible being an Alliance player, but I've said this before, I don't like Genn. And I'm leaning towards it, not just hoping, but I think it's going to happen. We're going to lose Genn Greymane due to his own rage and blindness. And hopefully, we don't lose Sylvanas. There's a chance we could, but that she grows, that she becomes the leader that she needs to be instead of this mess of a person that is distrusting, introverted, and willing to sacrifice all for one group over the rest of the Horde. She needs to start seeing all of the Horde as her people and not just the Forsaken.
Yeah, and if that means her stepping down as the leader of Undercity and maybe putting Nathanos in charge, we'll just have to see.
Overall, I think Sylvanas, I hope she plays a major role inside of the Horde starting zones and all the different zones over there. I hope we see Genn either get his stuff together, but I think we're going to see him go off the deep end in our starting zones or some other battle later on. That's our predictions. We think Genn's going to go, and we hope that Sylvanas becomes a greater character as we move forward.
Yeah, so if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe and comment down below your thoughts on this topic.
Thanks for everything you do. Thanks for all the watching, and don't forget to share with somebody. Peace.